Hi, my name is Steve, and I'm here today to talk about Dynaudio's Evoke series of speakers. This is a new line for them for 2019, and it replaces the Excite series, which finished up just this past year and was around for about 5 years. It was a very popular, successful line. The Evoke series has this model, the Evoke 20, which is their larger bookshelf. There's also a smaller bookshelf model called the Evoke 10, and there are two floor-standing models called the Evoke 30 and Evoke 50. I actually spent a lot of time with the Evoke 20, took them home, had them home for a few weeks, and so this is the model that I'm going to be focusing on today. But a lot of the sound qualities extend throughout the entire family. So I've been a fan of Dynaudio for over 30 years. The company itself has been around for about 40 years, and initially they were known for building absolutely top-notch drivers, woofers and tweeters. Then fast forward many decades, and last year when Crutchfield picked up Dynaudio, I got to try out the Excites, and I bought a set for myself because I just loved them. And what Dynaudio speakers in general are known for is terrific sound staging, and that's something that, it's primarily a concern of audiophiles, I guess, who really pay attention when they're listening and really appreciate a speaker's ability to create a three-dimensional sound stage where the instruments and voices seem to be laid out in front of you in kind of a three-dimensional way. Usually the sound stage will extend beyond the speakers to the right and left of their positions, and also you'll get a real sense of depth and height to the sound stage. Makes for a very immersive listening experience. So when I first set the Evoke 20s up in my listening room, I was initially kind of surprised because they didn't seem to have what I consider the Dynaudio house sound, which is, the huge sound stage and also just an impression of tremendous speed. Dynaudio speakers are really fast, so things like percussion and small low-level details really come through a lot and really help to flesh out that soundstage. Initially, like I said, the soundstage seemed smaller on the 20s, but the more I listened to them, the more I was hearing kind of further into the soundstage. So there's a tremendous sense of purity and transparency, really. There's a sense that you can hear into the soundstage. A lot of times the names that speaker companies come up for their speakers seem like they've been thrown out by somebody in marketing, or maybe they've tested them with focus groups. But for Dynaudio, I think the names actually really fit because the Excite line, they really are exciting speakers. I mean, they let you hear a lot of the energy in music really well. And what I found with the Evoke, and the word Evoke means to call to mind, and it's a little bit more of a subtle impression. I think that really describes what the Evokes do. I mean, they don't necessarily give you the same kind of technicolor presentation that the Excites do. But again, the more I listened, the more I found that it was presenting a very focused soundstage. So as you can see, there are some design differences between the Excite and the Evoke line. Dynaudio is known for a couple of things, and one of them is their soft dome tweeter, which they've been developing for about 40 years. And it's a silk textile dome with a series of special coatings on it. I think it's one of the best tweeters out there. And for the Evoke series, they've improved it even more. They've borrowed some technology from some of their higher end lines. One of those things is called the Hexus, and that is a kind of a dome-shaped chamber that's behind the tweeter, and it helps to optimize the airflow behind the tweeter, and it actually smooths out the dispersion. And the dispersion characteristics are one reason the Dynaudio tweeters and their speakers are so good at sound staging and imaging. And as far as the woofer goes, the Evoke 20 uses a larger woofer. It uses a 7-inch woofer, whereas the Dynaudio Excite 18, like I have, it's more like a 6 5/8 woofer. And you can kind of see that the way the woofer is attached to the cabinet on the Excite, all the screws are visible. But on the Evoke, they wanted to go for a much cleaner look. And so for both the tweeter and the woofer, all the screws are concealed. The Evoke 20 has a significantly bigger cabinet. It's probably about 50% larger as far as internal volume. And between that and the larger woofer, the bass response is definitely stronger on the Evoke 20. And I especially noticed it not so much in the deep bass, because for both of these speakers, I was using them with a powered subwoofer. But it's more in what I would call like the lower mid bass. There was just a nice sense of punch with the 20 that I didn't quite have with the Excite. And one thing that I discovered after I'd been listening to the speakers for a couple of weeks, Dynaudio includes with a lot of their speakers a port plug. The speakers are ported out of the box. Again, that's the way I listened to them for a few weeks. But once I put the port plug in, I found that the sound improved noticeably, especially when you're using bookshelf speakers with a powered subwoofer. If you use a port plug, it seems to act as almost an acoustic filter, and it makes the transition between the bookshelf speaker and the subwoofer a little smoother. So my impressions of the Dynaudio Evoke 20s really changed over the period that I had them at home. From the first couple of weeks where I was listening to them with the port plug out versus the last few weeks when I had the plug in. And Dynaudio, in their owner's manual, says that it takes these speakers, several weeks to fully break in. And part of the whole break-in process, I mean, there are physical changes happening to the drivers as they break in, but the other part of that is happening, between your ears. It's you getting used to the way the speaker presents music, and that takes some time. And that's one reason that Crutchfield is one of the few retailers to offer a 60-day return policy. So you really can set them up, in your room and see how they're going to sound in your room. So if you have any questions about the Dynaudio Evoke series or any other speakers that we sell, just call, chat, or email.